nice to see that some things have actually improved over the years.
Is this private?
Not necessarily.
This is Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, my old friend and teacher, visiting from Scotland.
Visiting most unexpectedly from Scotland.
This is Louise Marcus. Watch it, she's wanted by the police.
I didn't realize the police had such good taste.
So, you two have known each other for a long time.
Seems like an eternity.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you?
Good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm feeling immortal.
Wow.
That's
you
right.
You have the quickening.
I have the quickening, whatever that is.
Yes, because it wasn't explained to you in the quickening.
Yes, so...
And that's the episode.
I recommend. So, we are spin Polish, like, because we're always spinning. We both happen to be Polish. Any Polish news? Anything happening over there?
Oh, my dad called me earlier this week, actually.
That's the news. That's the news. His dad called him. How is your dad? Is he good?
Good. He is good. He said he has the vaccine, so that's good progress.
He's better than us.
Yeah, that's really good progress.
There you go.
Should I tell this story?
Do it.
So my dad, he's a funny guy. He's
a funny guy.
Pretty much every time he talks to me and my brother after, a bit of a gap, he asks, like, oh, so how's the girlfriend situation going? And we tell him, nothing's happening. And then he happened to mention this time, like, oh, by the way, your sister has a boyfriend now. And my gut reaction was just like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And then, like, 1 second of silence, I'm like, unless you're not cool with that. And even before I finish that sentence, he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's a dad of a daughter. So
So he's cool with that, of course.
Yes.
That's great. So that's what's been happening in Poland.
Yep.
Bartek's sister has a boyfriend and the dad is not cool with it. So there you go. That's the Polish news. The president, he's fine, but that is the real news.
Yes.
So we talk about movies on our show. This is Pictures Powwow, where we talk about a movie that has come recommended. This episode was a recommendation from one of our listening people and a fellow podcaster, Matt, who does some stuff with Miscellaneous. He had a few different podcasts over the time. He had Draw That Out at one point. He had, I can't remember the name of the other podcast he had. That was I really enjoyed it. It was about recasting different actors and different things.
I think I've heard of this guy a few
Yeah.
times.
And graphic artist guy as well. So he recommended a while back the movie of discussion for this, Highlander II, The Quickening. And I asked him if he wanted to come on, and he said, no, I don't want to watch that movie. So I said, that's fair. We'll watch it one day. And we finally got around to it. Bartek, should people be warned for spoilers for this movie?
I suppose formally yes. But in terms of my ability to give the spoilers, I'm a little bit half confident, I guess.
Let's say spoilers for Highlander 1.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen Highlander 1, recommend watching it, and then you can hear us talk about Highlander 2.
Yeah,
That's already saying we're not recommending Highlander 2.
I'm confident that I can spoil Highlander 1 if need be.
So, Highlander 2, The Quickening. What is your history, relationship, and knowledge of this film?
When I started watching internet reviews on the internet,
you watched them on the television.
There would always be talk of the good bad movies, so I would hear things about Birdemic, Troll 2, things like that. The Room. And Highlander 2, The Quickening was always one name that was floated around, but I'm not sure if I've ever actually seen a review of it or an in-depth discussion of it, so it was always one in my head that I didn't know many details of. There were some pop culture osmosis, imagery and stuff that I was aware of for Highlander, but I didn't know if it was 1 or 2, and evidently it was for Highlander 1.
So I had heard of Highlander 2 in the very same vein. I have seen some reviews of it, but they were incomprehensible to me because, and this is a part of what we'll discuss too, is a lot of their reviews were talking about how it's a bad sequel film, and refers to the first one, this is what the first one put down, and this is how the second one fucked it up. And it was good, bad in that regard. A lot of the discussion was in that regard. I rarely ever heard people talk about it as a good, bad movie, as a solitary movie that you could just watch on its own. It's good, bad in the ways like, oh, if you want to see a shitty sequel to a well-liked movie, this. And so when they would describe this, there was just lots of things that made no sense to me. Like, it's like as if I tried to describe why Star Trek V is a bad film. But you don't know anything about Star Trek.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, what do you mean they meet God? Well, it's not God, you see. It's an alien in the center of the galaxy. And there's this guy called... And, there's a lot of explaining to do to justify why that... See, I can't say Star Trek V is a good, bad movie on its own. It's good, bad in the Star Trek world. You need to know that world. This is what I understood with Highlander 2 was, I don't... And here's my history with Highlander... I don't think I've ever watched it. I think maybe, but I don't know if I've ever actually watched it, or I just know through cultural osmosis things about it. And what I do recollect, I don't think I know anything about it. And I've just watched the second one, and I still walk out going, I don't know what the Highlander's about.
Yeah. You messaged me as you were watching this one 20 minutes in that like you were completely lost, and you were hoping that my knowledge of the first one would help us in any way. And I was just about to start watching it, so... Having received that message, I took it very seriously and paid close attention to the first one and felt very confident that I understood the film. And then when I was watching the second one, I'm like, but what about... And what? You died. You were beheaded.
He came back. So... I don't know anything about Highlander, really. Here's my reference point for it, and I wonder if it's the same for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Highlander. What do you know? What did you know about it before actually watching it, and how did you know about it? Do you remember any specific points that Brendan brought up?
I know the iconic line of "There can only be one."
Yes.
And I knew about there was a fight scene in like a square room with stairs going around the perimeter, and they were fighting as they were going up it. And I knew that there was a Scottish character.
Right. Well, it's Highlander, of course. Here's how I know about Highlander. In the film Talladega Nights, the story of Ricky Bobby, one of the best jokes in it is Ricky Bobby being like, to Sacha Baron Cohen's character, to introduce him to American culture, he recommended that he should check out Highlander, and they talked about Highlander a lot, and that's how I know about Highlander. And then the best joke to the payoff is, at least for me in that film, I'm not a big fan of that film, is Sacha Baron Cohen's really good delivery of when they're driving and they're smacking into each other, and he's like, oh, Ricky Bobby, in his French accent, I watched Highlander, it sucked! It's just like rubbing the wound in more of like, I hate you.
Was he driving badly in that scene?
I hope so. I can't remember.
Because if he was, there's a scene of driving badly in Highlander.
There's a scene of driving badly in Highlander 2 as well. We'll get to all that amazing stuff. I knew it from that perspective of like, yes, there can only be one. I knew about there were mortal beings, and I think I knew about the head severing thing, but that may have been because I knew about this movie's plot from reviews. I don't know. I did not watch Highlander for this episode. Bartek did, so Bartek will be a reference point for that. I wanted to see if this movie was bad on its own rights, or if it is really like, this needs to be a sequel bad, and I do not know.
I can give you a very quick summary of the first film right now.
Please.
So, the first film, first of all, I like the first film. The first 30, 40 minutes is, it does that kind of thing where it doesn't give you all of the information, so you're kind of...
Lost a bit.
You're kind of lost a bit, but you're piecing things together. Then about 40 minutes in, you meet the Sean Connery character, who basically gives you a lot of the exposition that, like, really solidifies everything and all the rules.
Yes.
So the first part of the film, it jumps around between the modern day and the 1570s where the character came from. And you've got this internal mystery of like, okay, why is the same character in both of these places? So you learn, eventually that there's this really centuries long, essentially battle royale thing going on where various people have been either born or become immortal beings. They've been given the quickening, which it's not fully explained, but it essentially is the thing that makes you immortal except to decapitations. Yes. So the film is... And there's a rule that you cannot fight in holy grounds, which gets referenced at one point in Highlander 2.
It does. It was a weird moment.
Yeah, and especially since there's an iconic scene in the first one, I reckon. There's a rival character for the main character, Christopher Lambert, that exists both back in his own time and in the modern time. So it's,
and that's Clancy Brown?
And it's Clancy Brown, and if nothing else, that first film was worth it just for him, because, oh my god.
Yeah, he's always great. He's always great.
He's always great. He is fantastic in that film. You gotta watch that film just for him. And so eventually, you learn various little bits about our main character's history, that he's been alive for centuries, hence why he was in the past and he's also in the present. You learn about like his love life back then and how it still haunts him because they grew old and died.
Yeah, he referenced that in this movie.
He does, yes. And the makeup was just as bad in the first film of the wife dying as the wife in this film. And yeah, it eventually leads up to the ultimate fight between
good and
evil. And at the end of the film, you know, this battle that has been described to us, the rules have been explained. There is only one left at the end. You get this happy ending where...
What happened to Sean Connery?
Oh, sorry. So Sean Connery, he's only in the film for like 20 minutes, but it's a very memorable 20 minutes, obviously.
I mean, it's Sean Connery.
He's this Spanish guy with incredibly Spanish clothing.
Spanish. That was something that threw me off from this fucking movie.
Well, here's the thing. Incredibly Spanish clothing, incredibly Spanish name, but he's Egyptian.
No, please say he's Egyptian in Sean Connery's accent, please.
Egyptian. And he's had 3 wives, one of which was a Japanese princess who was the daughter of the famous swordsmith Masamune.
Then why in this fucking movie, in the second one, he's like, I guess I'm the oldest Scotsman in Scotland, if he's fucking Egyptian?
I don't know.
What did that mean? No fairness, did the second one slightly retcon it to make it make more fucking sense then?
I mean, the second one begins with like a retcon of like why they were immortal. They're like from the distant past and transported to the future.
Well, we will talk about that because we watched the director's cut. Both of us tried to find the original cut, but it was actually really hard. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, just one more detail about it. So the prize for being the only one left is just vaguely referred to as the prize. You don't get too many details about it, but at the end of the first film, when, you know, you got the happy ending, it's described as the main character, Connor, having the power to, like, understand every human's values, and that he now has the power to, like, be the ultimate negotiator for international diplomats to lead to a peaceful future. Or something like that.
Okay, cool. Sounds like a great movie.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch it, and I watched the second one. And the second one, we watched the director's cut of it. We couldn't find the original 89-minute long cut.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently that one's even more incomprehensible. Don't worry, the second one is with the director's cut is fucking nonsense and it makes no sense. I'm just going to say I hated this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the worst movie we've covered on Pictures Powwow? I'm thinking. There was no redeeming factor. I was bored. I found it mildly amusing, but incomprehensible. It felt like I was watching a film made by a foreign person who then gave it to an alien to produce. Like, I don't know what this was.
No, I think this is the worst.
There's nothing here, right? Like I struggle to get what was happening, and so I was like, oh, Bartek's going to come in and be like, okay, in this first film, this is what this is all is. But then does this film make any fucking sense if you watch the first one? Like
I said, I understood the first one. I understood all the rules. The plot because we know that this is a franchise, so you assume that the first one establishes all the rules of the franchise.
Yeah.
I walked in knowing all of the rules, and I feel like it just wasn't important. The only thing that really seemed to remain is, you know, the decapitation is how you kill an immortal. So, so from my understanding, in the original cut of Highlander II, The Quickening, mm-hmm.
they are represented as aliens instead of people from the past. Like, the people with the Quickening are extraterrestrial beings, and they live on this fantastical planet where they can speak with telepathy. Was telepathy a thing in the first movie?
No, but I think right at the end, Sean Connery, I don't know if it was a narration or if he said it to the main character, but he said, like, a line. A line, cool. Yeah. We watched this cut where they don't make them aliens, but people from a distant past, and I'm going to say this. I think the aliens make more fucking sense. Mm.
I don't know if you'll agree with that statement, because I was confused. I thought they were from an alien planet from the beginning, because they showed this terrain, they showed these 3 fucking bold judge guys that didn't speak with their mouths, but with their minds, and they had time travel powers, and I'm like, oh, these are like like Krypton, like aliens, right? But then they're like, oh no, they're from the past. And I'm like, wait, what?
Look, as someone who'd seen the first film, and I understood that, like, Connor is from 1570s Scotland, and our Egyptian friend Sean Connery, he mentions in that film that he is like 2,200 and something years old, so he's been alive for, 2 millennia. So I just assumed, like, oh, he was born at that point. Their lives up to this point have just been them living. And then he obviously dies in the 1570s. So when I see him and our main character Connor together in this like deserty wasteland, I'm like, where is this in the timeline? Because I kept thinking of the film that I kept thinking of with this one was the very first Star Wars film, A New Hope.
Yeah.
Because in that first film, he kind of felt like the kind of Obi-Wan mentor character.
Yes.
Who you see the entirety of their relationship in that film. You don't like have cutaways of like an adventure they would have had between scenes.
Yeah.
You see them meet, you see the mentor character die.
Yeah.
And in that film, there wasn't that much cutting away. It was pretty much all in Scotland around where he was living, Connor was. So when I see him in this desert environment together, it just does not read to me that there's no continuity, it seems.
And then you get Michael Ironside in this movie, and those 3 bald guy judges and his retarded henchmen. I'm sorry, there's no other word to describe his henchmen. And they felt like sci-fi alien villains, didn't they? Like, didn't the porcupine-haired henchmen feel like a Power Rangers?
The ones who were, like, flying around?
Yeah, didn't they feel like Power Rangers villains?
They felt very goofy.
They didn't feel like they were from the past, correct?
Yeah, the other immortals that we met in the first film all seemed like relatively like normal people who have adjusted to the modern day and who live like the very first person that kind of fights is a guy that looks like he works for the FBI. He's got like a black suit.
Yeah.
Looks like Agent Smith from The Matrix, and just shows you like the variety of
So he
people.
didn't have the Green Goblin hang glider to fly around
No,
on
it
like
was,
one of these dudes
it was just
did.
a sword fight in the car park.
So the idea that this film is made better because they removed the sci-fi alien aspect, it doesn't work because they obviously did it through ADR or reshoots or whatever it is, but you can still see the remnants of that idea in this director's cut. And thus there's a weird, like, disparate element here where you go, what? Because the rest of the film's very sci-fi. You have this ozone shield above the sky, people living in this capitalist society where John C. McGinley, we'll get to him. We'll get to John C. McGinley as evil businessman. I don't even think he had a name. Evil businessman. And like they have a sci-fi prison. It's so sci-fi. And I'm like, whoa. Is Highlander a sci-fi thing? I thought it was like a fantasy thing.
Yeah, the modern setting in Highlander was the 80s, so it wasn't like crazy or anything like that.
And we're a few years away from when this is set.
Yeah, we're 3 years away.
So shit, man, we better get there quick.
When the opening narration text scroll thing happened, it was like 2024, a shield has been put over the Earth. It was just like, this is not the film. This is not a sequel to the film I just watched.
So you would say even seeing the first one makes no difference to this film?
Even the main character didn't really feel all the same. Like, yeah, it's such a bizarre thing.
Because I messaged you, like you said, I messaged you saying, I'm 20 minutes in, nothing makes any fucking sense. You went in 20 minutes into this movie.
15 minutes and I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
And then by the end, you don't care anymore. You're like, oh, it's over. Thank God. Michael Ironside just got his head cut off like a puss.
I was fighting to stay awake, man. Yeah. And so many things happened so late in this film, too. Like, him killing the businessman guy. The fight was really quick. Like, the fight in the first film was really epic.
Well, okay. Let's go about it like this.
Yeah.
What's something you liked in this movie? Is there anything that you enjoyed? Or liked? My favorite was the trivia about the movie where Michael Ironside's like, yeah, this is a piece of fucking shit. We all knew it. So I just thought I would have fun and be the most memorable fucking thing in it.
Yeah, I can always say bless you to someone who has that attitude, but
bless you, Michael Ironside. We love you, baby.
It is this kind of thing of like, okay, so you tried to make it a bit more like the Clancy Brown role in the first film, though.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of like little things that are the same. Like there was a scene in the first film where Clancy Brown was playing chicken in a car, which the train scene in this film felt kind of the same thing. There was like a scene where they were taunting each other in a place that was holy ground, so they couldn't fight.
Was Clancy Brown intimidating and scary in the first movie?
Yeah, he was really crazy. He was big. He had the voice. His voice was like up to 11.
So he already beat Michael Ironside with this movie, because Michael Ironside is never scary. You know what I think Michael Ironside was trying to do here? This is around the same period. It felt like he was trying to do Kurtwood Smith and RoboCop. Like he was trying to be Clarence Boddicker, where he's like that chaotic, fuck you, I'm just going to kill bitches, leave. You know, he wanted to have that energy, which he doesn't. Like, Michael Ironside is the Kurtwood Smith replacement role in fucking Total Recall, but Michael Ironside has a different energy that he brings. And here, it felt like he was trying to be maybe Clancy Brown whilst also being Kurtwood Smith and RoboCop, and it felt false. Like,
yeah, Clancy Brown had a lot more things going on. He had like this leathery kind of look. He had like shaved head by the end. A lot of his scenes, he would have like leitmotif of like electric guitars behind him, and it was just like this really intense thing. And the voice, of course.
Michael Ironside's also annoying because you know he's bald, and they've got this fucking long-haired wig on his head, and he just looks fake. It's running around like with Tommy Wiseau hair. It's just so embarrassing. My favorite aspect of the movie was John C. McGinley. I thought he was great. I wished he was the villain of the movie. Wouldn't it have been interesting if there was no other Highlander
immortal,
villain? Wouldn't it have been interesting if the villain was just a normal CEO businessman who was just smarter than them? Like a Lex Luthor type?
Yeah, especially since you'd be following up on Clancy Brown as Kruger.
And, you know, John C. McGinley is just, you want to punch him, don't you?
He had the sliminess.
He was so funny. Knowing who he is, we've had him on the show a few times now, John C. McGinley. Obviously, you remember him. He was the gay cop in Wild Hogs.
Yes, that's true.
We had him on something else. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. We've had him a couple of times. He's appeared here and there in our show's filmography.
Feels like it, yeah.
And it was great because he was being exactly what you wanted him to be, silly. He knew exactly what type of fucking movie he was in. There were so many moments where he just would say a line in his John C. McGinley fashion or pull a face. And it was, like, I love the bit where he walked in and he goes to the other scientist guy, hello there. And he just, like, sits down, puts his feet up. It's like, don't think we don't get what you type on the computer into the other room. Of course we do. What do you think? We're stupid? He's like, he played it like he knew he was in this movie, but not playing it like Michael Ironside was, where he knew he was in a shitty movie, and he was like, I'm going to have fun. John C. McGinley felt like he knew he was in a shitty movie, but he's going to make the best of the situation, and he did. I loved him, and I loved his death, where he got his balls squished and thrown out a window.
He just said a line, and it's like, oh, well, you're dead now.
It was a stupid moment.
So, you really fucked up, huh?
That line delivery was fucking crazy. because you know it's one of those moments where the script needs his character to die, so they just need him to become dumb at the end for no fucking reason. And John C. McGinley plays it like that.
Excuse me, Bull, I'm gonna poke you now.
Yeah. Let me just stick my fish in this tank of piranhas, like my face in this tank of piranhas.
Yeah, I'm the fish.
You know, like, just eat my face. Like, let me just put my dick on this laser. Like, you know, it's so stupid. And he played it like that. Like, when he did that, you fucked up this time. Oh my god, I think I died with how corny the lines of dialogue were. I think 3 separate occasions you had the lines, here we go again, stated. And I wanted to die. But we're trying to talk about positives. Any other things you enjoyed about this movie? Or liked? Don't rush to say the female lead. Don't rush to say love interest. Who is an eco-terrorist for no reason at the beginning. It never comes into play. Don't rush to say, you're really struggling. I'm looking at you.
I guess I kind of like Sean Connery in this film, but it kind of leads into the fact that I liked him in the first one. So.
Okay. I'll ask you this.
Yeah?
Sean Connery was a fucking mystifying thing to me in this movie. What was the tone of the first movie, would you say?
Overall?
Yeah, how would you describe Highlander?
So I would say the first half hour, 40 minutes where you don't quite understand everything that's going on and you don't quite understand your main character is this kind of, not so light-hearted film where, there's a lot of violent things happening. You're getting very confused. And then the first time you see our main character Connor in his modern day, it's before he knows he's immortal and he's got all these like friends and family that love him. And then he dies in battle, which is where you first meet the Clancy Brown character. But somehow he survives that and they all think he's the devil and they like cast him out. And it cuts to 5 years later. He's living in this windmill essentially with a girl. And then just randomly Sean Connery turns up. And at this point, the film gets a little bit more goofy or comedic.
Oh, so you would say Sean Connery's goofy in the first one?
Yeah, wise, goofy kind of thing.
Because that's what was throwing me off. This movie's tones were all over the fucking place, the second one, because most of it's like deadly serious. You have Michael Ironside hamming it up, but it's hamming it up in tone with the others. And then every time it cut to Sean Connery, I felt like I was watching a fucking different movie where he's like going in to get the clothes montage and he's watching the jaunty, scary little promotional, like the safety video on the plane, and he's like mystified by modern technology. And I'm like, what is this?
He's got these wacky hijinks, whereas in the first...
And he's pulling faces all the time, like...
Whereas in the first film, like, he's got this camaraderie with Connor, and he's this mentor role, but also, kind of has some, nice lines here and there. Like one of the first things they do is he goes on a boat with Connor, and Connor's like, "Fuck, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I can't swim." He pushes him over the boat. Connor sinks, and he realizes, "Oh, I can breathe underwater." And then there are all these moments where, like, Connor,
that's so cool. Yeah. They don't do anything with it in this film. Huh?
And then there are these moments where they sword fight a lot, which when they meet up,
we see this in this movie.
Yeah, but in the first film, it's like there's a dynamic where, like, at first Connor's not so great and he gets defeated easily, sword to the throat. It's like, you'd be dead if it wasn't me, things like that.
Yeah.
Funny lines like the Egyptian line. And a lot of these kind of, Obi-Wan, Rafiki kind of like mentor wisdom that's a little bit goofy. And also because he is, like 2,000 years his senior, he's giving him advice like, I've had 3 wives. You've got one here. You might actually be happier if you left her because you're going to lose her forever. Things like that. And then his last scene is Connor's not there, but he's fighting Clancy Brown, and it's this intense fight where we see the mentor fighting Darth Vader essentially, and this epic fight, lightning, the building crumbles, and he's defeated, and it's a memorable thing. Like, he's only in the film for like 18-20 minutes, but kind of like Jerry last week, his presence is still felt because he's trained Connor to become proficient.
The
next him, proficient in fighting and surviving and knowing what to do.
I enjoyed Sean Connery in this movie, but I didn't know why he was in this movie. Like, that's the thing. Like, I enjoyed his energy, but it felt like he was in a drastically different film. Like, we cut to him and he's like fucking around in this Hamlet play. And yet this is supposed to be like a fucking Blade Runner world where it's like a sci-fi dystopia. And yet he has the comedy music and he's like wearing silly outfits and he's like on an airplane and he doesn't eat food that he doesn't recognize what it is. And I'm like, what is this?
The first film has a few comedy moments. Like there's this one where Connor meets another Highlander. I think he's essentially like the third last one that leaves, this like black guy. And he's like, "Oh, we haven't seen each other in this many hundred years." Like, "Oh yes, the incident with that guy in the British colonial times." And then it cuts to like this fight scene where Connor is drunk and fighting this like nobleman guy, and he keeps getting beaten by the nobleman, like stabbed through the chest. Nobleman goes to leave, but Connor gets up and it's just over and over and over again until he gets exasperated and says, "Okay, you've beaten me, I'll go." And the guy just like takes it out on his assistant.
So you're telling me that the first film had comedic moments, but what you're telling me that's really striking to me, that's really making me hate this movie now, is they actually fucking did stuff with the fact that they're immortal. Like, they actually did jokes and they actually did stuff with it. And this, it's like they drive through a place and get shot a bunch, and that's like the most that they do with it. Like, it's Michael Ironside gets shot. They get shot. That's it. They don't do anything cool with their immortality abilities. Like, that sounds so fucking funny and cool, and sounds like they had great ideas. Like, they can survive underwater, and like, none of that's in play here. Like, it's just, when you do a sequel, like with Star Wars, you you expand the world that you've built. This feels like it just minimized on it, just said, no, let's just shrink it down more and more until it's like, why is this a Highlander movie?
It kind of reminded me, this is probably going to be random, but like when we did Agent Cody Banks 2, it was the type of sequel where they kind of had the same main character, but they shifted the world entirely. So a lot of the things that were familiar from the first film are gone. It was kind of like that in this film, but then also the film's like a lot darker and a lot kind of less human. Like I mentioned before, Connor had friends in the first film, like the third last Highlander guy, his old family. He rescues a girl during like a World War II raid from a Nazi who like he uses immortality to pretend that he was defeated and then takes it out on the Nazi. There was just and he's got a relationship with this secretary, essentially, not a love interest that's in the film. And yeah, this character has been fleshed out, and in this film it feels like...
Did he have an old man voice in the first film like he did in this?
I don't know.
Because
I do not know what was up with that voice.
Could you tell me what that was? Okay. Real talk. You knew the movie was shit when he spoke, right? Because at the beginning, it's a gorgeous looking movie at the start, right?
The opera scene, yeah.
The opera scene, the cinematography, the emotions felt... I'm sure it made sense if you've seen the first movie. Like, that one felt like that's like the biggest moment in the movie where I felt like if I had seen the first one, I would understand this, because it's him like reflecting about being the Highlander and remembering again.
Yeah, but he's remembering retconny stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only weird thing.
But like, you know, and he's weeping, and you have the guy be like, "Sir, it's time to leave," and he just goes, "I understand that." What was that voice? And that's when you knew, as soon as he fucking talked, the movie's gonna be shit out.
Yeah, this opera scene, it's very slow, but like very dramatic. I feel like there's some sort of artistic message here.
You know, he's waving to someone across, and it's like really artistic, and then... and then he goes to a bar, and some woman's like, "You fucking destroyed the world, you cunt!" And he says like, and I'm like, what is this? Is this a comedy? Am I supposed to find it hilarious? Because I didn't think his old man makeup was that bad. It was fine for what this had to communicate across.
Yeah, physically he was fine.
Then he talked. I'm sorry, I blew out the mic. Then he talked, and he was like, what the fuck is this? What was that?
I don't know.
This movie, honestly, as much as we've said these things, there's no redeeming factors to this. This is like a slog. I could not see... I watched this with my wife. So it wasn't like I watched it like you did alone. We've talked about this. Good, bad movies are great when you're watching it with other people.
Yeah, and usually in instances where I've seen a good, bad movie alone and didn't have a good time, I could see how it would work with another person.
This...
I can't see it.
This was just too boring.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough wacky, funny shit in there. Like, I didn't really laugh that much at it. It was just kind of like, what? Okay, there's a shield. And I kept saying to myself, Bartek will explain how this connects to Highlander, but now that you've explained that it kind of really doesn't matter, would this film have worked... Okay, would this film have worked better if it was just its own sci-fi thing? Like, does this need to be Highlander at all? Can't this just be about an old man who's accidentally let the world fall into tyranny because he made a shield that's protected it? Now it's weaponized to use to tyranny. What does this have to do with Highlander? Really?
Yeah,
what does that matter?
Even if you can like rework the whole like remembering his past thing, like I could see it working, like, and making the film better, of course.
And you can make it, and this makes so much sense now. There was a trivia piece, and I didn't understand it because Rachel read it to me before I watched the movie, which is John C. McGinley on purposely lowered his voice to sound like Orson Welles.
There was a trivia point like that, yeah.
And then I think, wouldn't this movie be great as a sci-fi Citizen Kane, where you have him as an old man and you ping-pong around his life? So that's what they do in this movie, right? They ping-pong back to him in the 1990s and his wife's dying from this solar... Wouldn't it have been interesting? And forget the Highlander.
Yeah.
Would this movie have worked much better if they just... Because I wonder if this was an actual script made specifically for Highlander, or if they had a pre-existing sci-fi script and they just tinkered Highlander into it. Because that's how it feels. It feels like a pre-existing sci-fi script, and they just chucked Highlander in there for some reason. And I'm like, okay, but what does this have to... Because as someone who didn't watch the first movie, I didn't gain anything out of the Highlander mythos here. And it sounds like it's to someone who did watch it,
I was really let down. I thought there'd at least be a bit more substance, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like they expanded upon any of the Highlander mythos, did they?
No, they retconned it to make it worse.
And like, I reckon this could work as an interesting little sci-fi human character study film in which you have an old man like a Charles Foster Kane type who's a recluse, whose empire's run without them and has made everything worse.
Yeah, and he used to be a hero in a hypothetical prequel.
Lost their wife, their loved one, and they're reclusive, and now the world is like, what the fuck? And you flash back to his life to see how he's gotten to this point of being a young, idealistic man to saving the world, and then, I'm kicked out of the company, and that John C. McGinley, all that. But instead, it's just like, and then Michael Ironside jumps at them, and there was a moment to, oh my god, the editing. None of it made any sense. Could you explain this to me?
I'll try my best.
Michael Ironside runs out and gets hit by the truck. They're driving to the, place, the coordinates. They're driving to the coordinates that they got from the fellow scientist man they met in prison to see where the shield is breaking, right? To go above the ozone layer.
Right, there was a prison named Max or something, right?
Max prison.
Yeah.
They drive in a truck, like an armored truck, and they hit Michael Ironside, and they're like, fuck yeah. And then Michael Ironside is revealed to have gone underneath the truck, Cape Fear style, and he crawls out from underneath the truck, and he starts attacking them, and they're like on a highway, on a road or something, and they just kick him off, and he just stands there in the middle of fucking nowhere as they drive off to the location where they have to climb up the thing and be on top of a mountain and look at the mountain where the mountain is above the shield. You remember this?
Somewhat.
You better, because here's my question. Michael Ironside's left at the road in the middle of fucking nowhere, cut abruptly from them in the daytime looking at the shield, cut abruptly to Michael Ironside hanging out with John C. McGinley in the office again.
Is this where he becomes the partner?
No, this is after. He's playing with a crystal ball on the desk and rolls it off the desk, and that's what Michael Ironside does, complaining that, where did they go? What do you mean, where did they go? You could have just kept following them. It makes... how did you get back here so quickly? I know he's immortal, but it's not like he has super speed. He didn't have a car. He was in the middle of fucking nowhere. It would have made more sense if he just kept running after them.
Yeah, it would have.
Because do they get fatigued? Would he run out of energy running?
I don't think so.
They can survive underwater.
Yeah, he can breathe underwater.
That would have been an interesting twist on the mythos, right? Maybe he's just kept running this whole time because, he gets tired, but he can just keep doing it because he has this, he's an immortal guy with abilities. But instead, hard cut, and he's back with John C. McGinley just hanging out.
I think they can get, beaten and tired, maybe, because, when he was being outcast by his old friends, when he just realized he was immortal, they were trying to, crucify him, burn him, and...
Oh, in the first film?
Yeah, and when they exiled him, he was kind of staggering a bit, but that might have just been because he hadn't taken the wooden thing off his arms yet.
Yeah, and also, they do have to take time to recover from physical injuries, but if he's just sprinting, I don't know. And again, that could be something you could build upon, but it doesn't feel like they built upon any powers here, No.
Again, they didn't... I don't even think they mentioned the word quickening in this film.
Here's an example. X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
X-Men 2, you've seen that film?
I have, actually, yeah.
One of the greatest moments in the film. Do you remember how Magneto broke out of prison?
No, it's been too long.
Oh, how could you forget? Spoiler alert for X-Men 2. He gets Mystique to be a pretty lady to seduce the prison guard, get him drunk, and inject him with iron. Ooh. So that way, when he came back, he pulls the iron out of his blood and makes little metal balls and breaks all the glass and makes them into a disc so he can hover out.
Mm-hmm.
Expanding upon Magneto's abilities in a way that made sense. See, you're elevating the power set from the first film. He could have done that. You see that he could do powerful, but isn't that cool? It's building upon the word. It's saying, oh, that's cool. Doesn't happen in Highlander 2. You don't get anything like that. What does Michael Ironside do that's different to Clancy Brown? He's just a guy with long hair and a stupid scar on his face. There's nothing different.
I can't remember the details. I think whatever Sean Connery was doing as he was dying to hold up, that might have been something different, but even I can't even remember what that was.
Could you please tell me why Sean Connery had to die there? He managed to push the thing back up, and he's just standing there chatting, and they walk out. He could have just walked out too, right?
after he deactivated his powers, it seemed like he had a few good seconds to leave.
Yeah. It made no sense. Unless that's all of his powers and then that's what kills him. Like he's overused his powers.
Like, yeah, you spent so long like him trying to reunite with Connor, and then feels like they didn't even spend all that much time together when they did.
The editing in this movie, like there was so many points I'm like, wait, we're in the past now? Because it's especially confusing when he gets young again, when they abruptly cut to the past, and you're like, wait, what's happening? Oh, right, this is the past. Okay.
With the dying wife?
Yeah, with the dying wife, and they had one or two other moments where it was the past, and I was like, wait, what? Wait, what? I don't know what's going on. Like, them making the shield happen, and like, right. Like, because this film's nonsense. Like, I can't fathom how they thought that this would be a good movie or good sequel, and evidently no one did. Everyone knew it was going to be shit.
I guess one bit of continuity is in both films I don't buy the main character falling in love with the female lead.
Oh yeah, you want to talk about our female lead in this one?
Like,
was she more or less pathetic than the female lead in the first one? Because this one I think is one of the most pathetic female roles I've seen in a movie.
It's really forgettable.
Why is she here?
She was like a terrorist at the beginning, and
then she's just there.
And they just make out suddenly, and they're in love.
And then she's just there.
Yeah. In the first film, the love interest, the one that we see die in this film, was a detective. She was a forensics person working with the police who, found like bits of the sword from the beginning fight scene and like was following up the whole film. Eventually, like right near the end, like it's leading up to the climax, sort of, maybe half an hour left, 25 minutes left. They have a scene where he shows her proof that he is immortal. He gives her a knife, forces it to stab him, and then she realizes, like, oh my god, you're immortal. And then they kiss, and it was just so sudden and out of nowhere. And then in the next scene, she gets kidnapped by Kruger, the Clancy Brown, and then it's like, oh, your love interest is in trouble, so it like felt very convenient.
But it sounded like she at least had agency in the plot before that, right? She was investigating.
She had a whole film to be on the screen.
What was this character there for? Like, she was just some woman who was blonde, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't know.
She got to climb up a ladder, and I got to see her butt while she did it. It's like, is that all that she was there for? Was just to be the quota of the romance?
I guess.
It's like...
I seriously have forgotten a lot about it, and I watched this film only a few hours ago.
There was a moment. I lost it. I went, no, fuck you. This was my fuck you moment to the movie. Very late in. Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert drive through the Max prison and get shot 1,000,000 times to death from all angles through the car. The car crashes. Then they open up the boot of the car, and she's in the boot of the car perfectly fine. How did they know she was there? How did she not die herself? They shot through the entire fucking car. And then here's the thing. Why was she even there? What did she offer? Because all she did was just stand there and talk to them, and then they came back to life and just punched the guys in the morgue. They could have just done that anyway. They didn't need her. She didn't offer anything to the fucking plot.
She's so forgettable that I when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that scene did happen.
And that was my fucking moment. I'm like, that is so fucking...
And now it's one of the few things I remember her doing in the film. Because she has this weird reaction of like, hey guys, I was just in the back of...
Yeah. They were treating it... She didn't even act like I was kidnapped. She was saying that she was kidnapped, but she wasn't acting like I got kidnapped and they tied my wrists. Please, this is my car. They took me.
It was like, oh, you found me, guys.
Hey guys, I'm in on the plan. You want to come talk to me as I bullshit in front of you? Like it's so hecka. Like even in Star Wars, right? I know we keep bringing it up, but there's that moment in A New Hope where Han Solo's pretending to be a stormtrooper and then he just like, fuck it, and shoots the thing.
Yeah.
At least he pretended for a bit. Mm-hmm. She didn't even have that. She was like, hey guys, hi, hee, hoo. I'm like, what is your deal? Is this, like, and then that goes again to the tone. Is it supposed to be funny? Is it supposed to be sad? Is it supposed to be a serious action, drama, thriller? I don't know what this is. I don't know what's going for. Like, I genuinely enjoyed the safety commercial thing that they had on the plane. But then I said, but wait, this doesn't match any fucking thing else in the movie. Because this, again, Bartek, you only watched a little while ago for the first time RoboCop.
Mm-hmm, yep.
it made sense in RoboCop, right? Because RoboCop had a black sense of comedy throughout the entire film.
Yes, absolutely.
And you got the sense that the world, although a bit silly, was still very intense and serious. You still had rapists on the street. You had a corrupt businessman. You had Clarence Boddicker. But then you had, like, the comedy in RoboCop was commenting on something about society. What's this one commenting on? The safety commercial where the plane crashes and all that. Like, what's that saying? What's this film's universe saying about modern day society?
Yeah, it just felt like a comedy skit from a ridiculous movie. It's like something that I don't know, you'd see in like Naked Gun or Airplane or something.
Yeah, or something you would see in RoboCop, but it would make sense in RoboCop because the whole world is commenting on the greed of capitalism in a comedy sense with "I'll buy that for $1," to the literal evil sense of the businessman is Dick Jones, second in charge of OCP. OCP runs the cops. You're a cop, right? It all makes sense. But here it's just like, and here's a little comedy moment where it feels like, you know what it feels like? It feels like an Adult Swim sketch.
That's what I meant. Like, you'd see it in like a comedy thing.
It feels like Too Many Cooks. Like that kind of weird thing. Like, here you go. It's like, what we're making fun of, but it's a joke. Doesn't make sense in this movie. Like, I liked it, but I was like, what does this have to do with any fucking thing?
Yeah, Adult Swim or Abrams Zucker, whatever they were called.
We covered Enemy Mine last week. A sci-fi world that we only got to see a small corner of, but you got an understanding of what it was like. It was a funny movie too. The comedy made sense in that movie. It's like, for instance, there was a conveyor belt scene in that movie where the music fucks up. Remember? In Enemy Mine when they got Dennis Quaid's body and he's on the conveyor belt and you have the church music and then you hear the tape warble and it craps out.
Yeah.
It was funny because we already understood the world that the humans lived in was a fucked up, degrading society, right? Where things were breaking apart.
And even at the beginning, we got some of their personalities, like, the American bravado of like, oh, casually, we killed a guy. They killed one of us. Yeah.
It was actually commenting on something. I don't think Highlander 2 is commenting on... Is this commenting on the environment? Is it commenting on capitalism with business. John C. McGinley? No, it's just having those there because that's what you have to have. John C. McGinley has no right to be in this fucking movie. His character has no right... He doesn't show up till like halfway through the movie and I'm supposed to give a shit about him? Again, back to RoboCop, Dick Jones is there from the very fucking beginning. They don't pussyfoot around with Dick Jones.
You know who every character is in that film.
He comes in, John C. McGinley, I don't even know his character's name, I just know the actor. He comes in and then he's out.
I barely remember him from before the scene where, the partners scene.
Well, that's when he first shows up, is when they have the computer conversation, and then it randomly cuts to a shot of John C. McGinley. You don't know where the fuck he is, and he's just pensing his fingers like Mr. Burns in another room, and you're like, wait, who's this? I knew, because I was like, John C. McGinley's in this movie. I was like, where is he? And then there he was. But it made no fucking sense. There wasn't even... what they needed? They needed to have... And they did have these... You know how they had the little commercials that they were playing? They should have had a commercial or a news broadcast or like a speech with John C. McGinley's character talking about like business is booming and
establish him.
Being a symbol in the society and a figure of tyranny and propaganda. Fuck, Super Mario Brothers, the movie did this so much fucking better.
That's true.
They said
the King Koopa pictures everywhere, yeah.
And he had an overbearing... Fucking hell. If Super Mario Brothers, the movie, can do better with its sci-fi world building than Highlander 2, you're fucking shit. Man, what else do you want to say? Were there any real big what the fuck moments for you? Or like, what? Things that took you off guard, confused you, just dumbfounded you? Whether they were just on their own merits or this being because you just watched the first one, you got thrown for a loop? I mean, Sean Connery's here. I don't know why he was.
Yeah, I don't even know if they explained... Maybe it was like the prize thing. He said his name and he came back. I don't know. He was supposed to be dead. It's like if Empire Strikes Back came and, Alec Guinness is back for no explanation.
Well, he's a ghost, so it's fine.
But, like, physically back. Like, not a ghost.
Oh, yeah. And he's just hanging out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any moments that you want to talk about in this? Any other things?
This movie is so forgettable.
The end fight is pathetic.
Yeah. Again, compared to the first one, it's embarrassing.
Michael, here's a question. And maybe this ties back to the first Highlander.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it doesn't. was Michael Ironside's problem? What did he want? What was his issue? I didn't understand what his issue
I don't know.
was.
Was he like pissed off that that Connor won in the first film?
Why did he need to go into their timeline and kill them?
I don't know. I thought the whole...
They kept saying, he hasn't made the choice yet.
Oh,
like, what
right.
was this?
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, there was some... I can't remember if it was explained in the first or second film, but like, when you get the prize, you get to choose to either... There's like two options, and the second one's like grow old and die, and the other one's something else. And I think they mentioned that Connor hadn't chosen one of them, but he was old, so doesn't that imply that he picked the second one?
But what was... That's the thing. Central villain. What's his issue? What was his problem? Do you know?
No.
There you go.
I barely understood that whole like flashback thing when I was watching it. I think after, like, later in the film or when I was reading the synopsis, I understood like, oh, okay, it's retconning their backstories. Right, yeah.
Again, villains. You need to make them make fucking sense. All I knew was he just hated our main heroes because they were the main heroes. No other reason. Clancy Brown, I'm sure he had a motivation in the first movie. I'm sure he wanted to be the one and only.
Yes, absolutely. And he was like a bloodthirsty knight guy, so of course he wanted to fight.
This guy, like, Michael Ironside felt like he was supposed to be like a mixture of like a supreme general of some kind of military force, whilst also still being like a Mad Max crazy man who's just like crazy. Woo! Again, RoboCop. Clarence Boddicker in that movie has a motivation. He wants to be the kingpin of the city. He needs to kill these cops. He needs to do this. And he's doing this in aid of Dick Jones, the bigger villain, who has a motivation all of his own. He wants to be the CEO, and he wants to rule the brand new city and install his RoboCops. I understand the motives. Darth Vader, I understand the fucking motives. Lord Humongous, I understand his motives. He just wants the guzzling. Give him the guzzling, please. He's asking very, very nicely, right? In Mad Max 2. He just wants it. He says it in his eloquent voice, where he's just like, please give it over. Like, fucking Bane in Dark Knight Rises. I understood his. I do not know what Michael Ironside wanted in this. I don't know what he wanted, and I don't know what his fucking problem is. They tried
to make him more complicated than the first film, which had a simple villain, and it did not communicate. Yeah,
sometimes you can just have a simple villain who's like, I want to kill you. But you need to have a reason why they want to kill them. I don't know what his reason was in this, other than he just didn't like him. I didn't understand, like, wasn't he better off where he was? Where, like...
I think he would have been just fine if he did nothing.
Oh, and then there was this great moment, too, when once he arrives in our city, in our world, he has that whole thing where he's like, I think I'm gonna like it here. I want to rule here. Why? He didn't experience anything to make him feel that way. To draw another parallel, Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone. You have Wesley Snipes as a criminal from the past, and he's woken up, with Sylvester Stallone as well, into a PC-cultured future in which everyone's weak. So of course he's gonna like it here, because now he can fucking rule with no opposition. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
Criminal in a world of people who don't know what violence is. Of course he's going to want to stay. What did Michael Ironside want in this city? He's like, I'm going to love it here. I'm going to rule this city. Why? What did you see here that you're like, yeah?
Because I can be a bad guy here.
Because they got cars. You have time travel. I think that's fucking more important.
Yeah, comparing to the first film, the final fight was pathetic, and this film's equivalent of applying the rule of no fighting on holy ground was way less interesting, because in the first film, it's at an actual church when people are praying, and Clancy Brown is just not using his indoor voice. He's talking about how he raped...
Does he ever have an indoor voice? It's Clancy Brown.
Exactly. He's talking about how he raped a woman like centuries ago. People are getting offended and leaving, and he has this one-on-one conversation with a priest where he's like feigning, apologies, and then he goes to kiss the priest's hand and he like licks it like, all the way up, and the priest just gets disgusted. It is just this glorious scene, and my brother was passing by, and he and I have both played the game Jack 2, where he plays like a dictator character, and he uses like the exact same voice. And I'm like, hey, look, Oscar, Baron Praxis is being a prick, and he's like, yeah, I heard.
I love it. Thankfully, this didn't kill the franchise. There's more Highlander material out there. Unfortunately, it did kill Christopher Lambert's interest in it. I mean, he appeared in the pilot of the TV show and there's a couple here and there, but it made him really feel like, well, I'm never going to step in this universe again, which is sad because my grandmother apparently really liked him as an actor in the first movie. I don't know if you cared much about his performance in the first movie.
He was a lot more intriguing in the first movie because, again, he was very human.
And in this, you could tell he cared so much about it, but there's just nothing to work with. Like, whenever he was allowed to be charming, he was genuinely charming, but there's just nothing to work with.
Yeah, he had a lot more to work with in the first
Although, I'm an old man. Somebody should have stepped in. Somebody should have stepped in and said, Chris, no. Bad actor, bad.
Both of these films...
Roll up the script and hit him on the nose, bad actor.
Well, I think both of these films struggle with old makeup or old characterization for younger people, so, yeah. That's
fine. That's, it's okay. Sean Connery is a Spanish Egyptian, so I think that's the lowest thing down on the list in comparison to that. Are you interested in exploring any more Highlander material?
I've heard that people have been using "there can only be one" to describe the fact that the first film is the only good one. So
I heard the TV show is alright.
Well, maybe. I mean, I'm happy with just the first film.
You don't want to watch all 100 episodes of the Highlander show?
I didn't realize it was that long.
I looked it up on IMDb and they said there was like 101 episodes or something ludicrously high.
Is it like a prequel show?
No, I think it's like a sequel show because this sequel here gets totally ignored in the other ones, and Christopher Lambert's like is handing it off to the next Highlander. It's like, here, you're the next. He's the Sean Connery.
The next immortal. Yeah.
He's the Sean Connery to the next immortal being, I guess, in the first pilot.
Yeah, I just struggle to see like what is next in terms of like the ending of the first film, because it just felt like, here's a happy ending. There's no more to be done with this story. So yeah, it just feels like a standalone film. Yeah, that's understandable. I would totally get that. Highlander 2's garbage. One day I will check out Highlander 1, don't worry, but it sounds intriguing. I definitely recommend the first one, but second one... But this is garbage. This made no sense. I had a good chuckle, though, when it was like, and now we're going to destroy the shield generator. And I'm like, oh, how are you going to do it? Are you going to just turn it off? No, I'm going to step in it. He just stands in it. And then Sean Connery says, it'll take the power of both of you to destroy the shield or, like, destroy the thing. And then he looks at her, and then it explodes. And I'm like, that's not taking the power of both of you? What are you talking about? That's not how that works. Maybe he was thinking of a different thing. I don't know, but I thought it was really funny. You know what I said? This is me. Okay, wait. So the shield got fucked up because his body was in it. Why did he need to do that? Couldn't he have just dragged the dead villain's body into it and just throw that in? Doesn't need to suffer again, because they do feel suffering. They do feel the pain. It seems like they don't like, ugh. But I guess he's a masochist. I don't know what his deal is. I guess one last point, the soundtrack for the first film was so much better because like every song was Queen. Yes. I didn't know that about the film, but just every song was Queen and it was great. You're the Flash Gordon then. Flash. Well, that one was specifically made for Flash. I don't know if Highlander 1 was specifically made or they just gave them songs. There were a few songs that were appropriate, like during the montage of the wife getting older, Who Wants to Live Forever was playing. Nice. In both these films, he says the line, it's a kind of magic. Nice. So, yeah. No recommendation from us. Highlander 2 is the worst movie we covered on Pictures Power. Not the worst movie we've ever covered. But on Pictures Power, I may have to go through the list, but I think this is, You know what's funny? Yeah? You seem, though, here's the thing about you. Although you didn't like it, this movie, you seemed more buzzed about it than you did the Neon Demon. Where the Neon Demon felt like it traumatized you, where you're like, yeah, guy, but this is so much worse than that, right? Like, I mean, you didn't hate that movie. Neon Demon's one that I'm like, I think I'll like it if I watch it again. This one is like, I'm done. Yeah, Neon Demon's like an auteur giving you their vision and you weren't accepting it straight away, and maybe you will next time. But this is like, this is trash. Yep. I think I've said it multiple times on this show, Pictures Power, even way back in like the Talking Heads movie that you recommended. True Stories. There's been a bunch of films that I'm like, I think I need to watch this a second time to give it a fairer go. Yeah, exactly. Me too. And this one, I don't think so. No, this is the worst thing we've watched. Yep.
What is your recommendation for next week's episode? Because it is your choice, or next episode. We're going to actually be taking a week off.
Oh, that's true, yep.
I got my anniversary coming up, and I just want to spend time doing that and just living.
Yep. It's a film I have seen before, but I didn't quite, it kind of relates to what I was just saying, didn't quite watch it properly. I watched it at school, I was dicking around, so I need to give it another chance.
Yeah.
It is a returning director for us. It is the 2005 movie called Brick by Rian Johnson.
Cool. I've heard great things. I've not watched Brick myself, and I can't remember if this is the one where people say this is what got Daniel Craig James Bond. I know that there's a movie or two where he's in Brick. I'm sure he's in Brick.
I can't remember. I know Joseph Gordon-Levitt is.
Okay. I thought he was in Brick. Was he in one of Rian Johnson's other movies? Because that's why Rian Johnson had him also in Knives Out, because was that maybe another one like Layer Cake?
I'm not sure, but yeah, this is one of those films where I'll explain it in my history next episode. But yeah,
right.
I need to give it a fair go.
Yeah, I haven't seen much of Rian Johnson's stuff outside of Knives Out and the Star Wars movie, but we'll see how this one goes. Okay, Bartek, I'm excited. You got me with one that I didn't expect you to come out with, because sometimes when Bartek does his recommendations, I'm like, okay, it's going to be something I know he knows.
Yeah,
but this is good. This is one where you've seen it, but you want to know more about it. You want to give it a fairer shot. Because, yeah, I know that's that feeling when you're in high school and you're watching a movie that they've put on, or you're watching something and you're like,
and the teacher wasn't, I'll get into it next time, but the teacher wasn't there, and when he came back, it's like, what do you guys think? And we were just like, oh, we didn't like it, but we weren't paying attention, so it wasn't fair.
Yeah, bummer. And their heart was broken.
Yep.
And they're like, please, my name's Johnson.
I really,
Mr. Johnson.
And I really, really like that teacher too, so I felt guilty for the past 12 years.
Let's get him on the show. So
we know a guy who knows him. But yeah.
There you go. We know a guy who knows a guy. We're Saul Goodman. Well, pleasure, Bartek, talking about Highlander with you. Highlander 2. Highlander and Highlander 2.
Highlander 2 is less of a pleasure, but no, it's still a pleasure, yeah.
No, it was terrible. People, you can find us on those social medias, Facebook and Twitter, under Spit and Polish Presents. We have our email, spitandpolished@gmail.com, where you can email us with your questions, queries, thoughts, concerns, and or recommendations. You can recommend movies to us that we will cover for you. We'll add them to our list. So if you have a movie that you think that we should look at, discuss, let us know. You can email us or hit us on the social medias. All of this is in the description of this episode.
Yep. Give us recommendations. It all goes on the list, even Highlander 2 The Quickening.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Now, we have to kill you, Matt, because there can only be one podcasting host.
Yep.
And then I have to kill you, because there can only be one. There can only be one.
Well, guess what, Ryan? You have another podcast, and your co-host is your wife,
my
right?
wife. Well, she's not here, is she?
Yes, but
there's only one now.
There can only be one, but just for a bit.
Just for a bit. Then they'll come back in Scotland.
Yeah, it's not like I only come here once a week.
There you go. All right, Bartek, let's go decapitate.